Hello, everybody. Another close call, but Grizzly to the save with the quick code. So thank you, Grizzly, if you're watching. And Mary, hope you're both having a good evening. Mr. Star Fox is already in and greatly appreciated. Hope everybody's doing well on this weekend. Sorry about the miss last weekend, but health issues come first, and sometimes you just got to deal with them. The week before that was a great show, though. Norma's in the house. Hi, Norma. Norma and I need to catch up. Glad she's here, though. Thought we'd go in a little different direction. We've kind of beat the health and fitness thing to death, so we'd move on to some conspiracy theories tonight. We'll wait and see how many people shuffle in here in the next couple minutes, but in the meantime, I can kind of give you a update. Everybody knows, or for the most part, those who do know, I'm getting ready to do my first bodybuilding competition in honor of a dear friend who passed away recently. So we've been working on that the last 3 weeks. Training's been good. Nutrition is on point. Dropped a couple pounds, leaned out. Did suffer a minor setback in my stupidity with a popped my pec tendon a little bit just because of a judgment in lapse of judgment, we'll say, in the proper technique to warm up, never considering some issues I had. So, but it's on the mend. Training's back. Hope everybody's had a good couple weeks. Hopefully everybody's keeping their New Year's resolutions intact, which the last show we did was on the 10th. So, that was technically Quitter's Day. If you were giving up, that was the day to do it. You can join the masses in celebrating that holiday. But tonight, a little different avenue for us. Uh, Two passions of mine that I've had for a very long time are Bigfoot and a certain ship. So we'll start off with a story that may sound familiar, but don't jump to conclusions yet. It's about an ocean liner who, on the maiden voyage, went out on an April night. And I know, sounds familiar, but it struck an iceberg, sank in a matter of a couple hours, and uh, well over 1,000 people left this world pretty early. Now, I know everybody's jumping to a certain ship, but what if I told you that it wasn't Titanic? It was actually a book in 1898, and it was called Wreck of the Titan. And looking back, everybody are saying that I can't even think of the writer's name now, I forgot. But the writer prophesized Titanic, and people should have been careful, as the book was named Wreck of the Titan. So in 1898, a full 14 years before Titanic went out, this man wrote a book about an ocean liner on the maiden voyage on an April night, hit a 1 in a million iceberg and sank. So very similar story, but in true life, Titanic went out, and after a few days at sea, we all know it hit the iceberg at 11:40, sank at technically, was it 2:10 a.m. because it took 2 hours and 40 minutes for that vessel to go beneath the waves. So technically it hit the iceberg on the 14th, but they count the sinking on the 15th because of the fact that it was after midnight. So I always found that kind of interesting, but the truth's the truth, so you have to go there with it. And maybe tax day, which obviously is a conspiracy theory, so we'll get into that one with money being involved. But Titanic, to me, it's kind of a sad story because it shows the man's ability to put too much faith in his own technology. I mean, they even said at one point before the voyage, one of the people said even God couldn't sink her himself, which is a pretty bold challenge. And I think Mother Nature intervened and ended that debate once and for all. What can happen? Poor planning, man's poor planning as far as trying to save money while doing that. They should have put the watertight compartment doors all the way to the top, not stop a few floors down to save that time, save that money. All about had 2 fuel lifeboats, as everybody knows. It was for, I believe, 1,000 people were lifeboat capacity. And then meanwhile, the ship was able to accommodate 2,100 people, so less than half. Again, putting faith in the fact that we're never going to use them, so why bother? Man's faith in technology, and ironically, that's kind of bit us in the butt at several occasions. If you look at Space Shuttle Challenger, for instance, we got pretty complacent there, and look what happened with an O-ring. Challenger, I'm sorry, I just said Challenger. Columbia, what's a few little pieces of debris off the main ship going to hurt? And both ended tragically, needlessly. If they had just paid more attention instead of having so much faith in our own technology that we're infallible. But with the sinking of Titanic, there's quite a few conspiracies out there, and some of them are pretty darn wild. With the fact that, the one that comes to mind right off the top of my head is there was a book written, The Ship That Didn't Sink. So the conspiracy within that book pushes what they believe was an old switcheroo right at the end. That it wasn't Titanic that went down. It was actually the sister ship Olympic, which had been damaged, ironically being driven by Captain Smith. And so what they wanted to do was, in order to get some insurance money, they switched everything around and made Olympic look like Titanic. They ran it out there and intentionally sunk it to collect the insurance money. Really made no sense because there was so much. Hey, Griff, how you doing? Welcome to the party. So much they would have had to change because there were so many amenities changed after Olympics voyage in order to enhance Titanic and make Titanic the gold standard. So in order to make all those switches, in order to convince insurance companies, it would have been way more expensive than to just park Olympic at the boat and, hey, Roger, how we doing? Good to see you. So they could have literally just had an accident at the dock and collected all that insurance money, or set fire to the inside of it and collected the insurance money. So switching them out, intentionally sink it, really doesn't make sense. Not only that, they did debunk it while they were down looking at the wreck. They looked at the ID number on the propellers. Titanic's was 403. The number on the wreck is 403 as well. So they physically debunked that theory, but it still lingers just like any other good conspiracy theory. Another one is that it didn't actually hit an iceberg. It hit pack ice. And that theory is being pushed. I guess it doesn't matter, but the fact that they're still pushing something that different than what actually happened was they're saying it hit some low-lying ice instead of an iceberg. And I think basically just to try and take the blame off the people that did it. Because they were saying how on a clear night, the ocean's capable of distortions, with the iceberg being lights high at 60 feet, which was one report. And the third officer who was driving the boat that night said it was 100 feet. And that was the other figure they came up with as far as being an illusion of nature. But to me, none of those make sense because they actually found ice on the deck when the passengers came out. So it was well over 60 feet, but maybe not quite 100. But pack ice is out. The rescue ship that saved a bunch of the people who made it to the Carpathia, it took them about 4 hours, was in pack ice, but Titanic just hit one of those bergs that are 1 in a million. They call it a blue berg. What happens is the bottom melts gradually from the water, and then the top gets heavy, so it turns over upside down. But now instead of this nice white top, you've got this more bluish color from the ocean water being in it. So it takes on a blue tint, which at 11:30 at night, when they saw the iceberg, would make it definitely harder to see. So, and the other thing was they deliberately sank it, which blows my mind because they basically wanted to. There were 3 billionaires on board: John Astor, a man named Guggenheim, and Isidor Straus. We're all billionaires in America. J.P. Morgan wanted to set up a one system central bank, try to make all the banking as one thing, sponsored by him. And he wound up canceling his ticket at the last minute on the Titanic to go across. And so what they are proposing is, because they think that Strauss and Astor and Guggenheim all oppose this, that they took the ship out and intentionally rammed it and sank it in order to relieve themselves of any opposition for the banking system. That makes no sense. Why would you do that? And with all the other people in it, it just made no sense. They actually found no proof that those men opposed that to begin with. So another ridiculous theory. Another theory that's out there is that there was which this one is partially true. There was a fire in one of the coal bunkers, and they fought for a very long time to get that fire out. But what they did was they did get the fire out. They sailed, but they're saying two things. That the conspiracy is, one, they never got the fire out, and they were shoveling the coal that was on fire into the boilers in order for it to get rid of it to fight the rest of the fire, which accounted for Titanic having to zip through the water at such a high speed. And the other theory was that it got so hot that it compromised the steel, which opened up as far as being able to be pierced from the outside. They had the fire out before that. I don't think that steel was compromised. It was pretty darn sturdy. As far as the shoveling in the boilers, again, don't buy it. That was one of the captain's orders, was to increase speed, so they maintain their speed through the ice. And that's another theory, leads into the other theory of they were just trying to beat a record. They wanted Titanic to be at the top of the boat, or top of the list as far as fastest, most luxurious cruise ship ever. And the sister ship Olympic had held that record. So they wanted Titanic, being the same company, break it in order to prove that they had the best fleet as far as luxury and speed and getting across the ocean in just a few days, which now we do it in a few minutes. So that would seem kind of pointless to it. There are so many. There's that ancient sculpture was on board, and that it sank because of a curse, and being in possession of this ancient sculpture. There's also other ones. I saw some on Wikipedia that were interesting as well. As far as, this one is always interesting, that they never close the watertight doors. That's why it sank so fast. That's not true. They proved it in several tests, including some stuff done at the University of Michigan. Hello, Little Twisted. Good to see you. And watertight doors had to have been closed, because if they hadn't closed it, it would have capsized, and about 70 minutes earlier than what the ship did sink. So they proved that time and time again. So that was another one that got debunked. The one question I have on that, though, is we know people were trapped. And also, James Cameron brought this point up. Most ships, when they get hit like that, especially on one side or the other, tend to capsize. They tend to roll over. And, sorry, I gotta read that. With Titanic, it didn't. It sank pretty level. I mean, there was a little bit of a lean to the port. Right. Lean to starboard. And also, which was the side the hull was on. Yeah, Norma, it is crazy what people will come up with. You know, anything to make a buck and push a book to make another buck. It is absolutely mind blowing. But back to as far as the ship going down and not capsizing, it makes you wonder if maybe the engineers were trapped and maybe they were able to, with the pumps, keep the water level in the boat so it gave more time for people to get out. You know, that's one of the theories out there. I guess you could say it's kind of a conspiracy theory too, because we'll never know. Only one of the engineers made it out. And also with the amount of damage, that was the one that always blew my mind, because I did a book report. Now we're going back a ways when you actually had to do a book report. And it was in the 5th grade, and it was on Titanic, and it was just before Bob Ballard had discovered the wreck in 85. So I think my report would have been in 1980. And the ship went down in one piece, you know, the typical iceberg. But then when Bob Ballard found it, you know, all my drawings were wrong, as what everybody predicted was because the Titanic had actually broke. You know, she went down in 2 pieces, and with once they were able to use the sonar and different types of LiDAR and stuff, they were able to find the damage was actually really small for something that size, because you're talking about, if you take 11 of these normal sized comic magazine and open them up and lay them on the floor, that's the amount of damage that sank that ship. Doesn't seem like a lot. Like I said, another couple feet on those water doors would have way made a difference on that. Hindsight, though. So that was one of the other conspiracy theories, was it was supposed to be a 300-foot gash. Guess what? No gash. Just little dots, like Morse code going down the side. But it went through 5 compartments, which, as we all know, was one more than straw than a camel could hold, and that's why it went down. Part of the reason why it went down. The other one that is pretty darn goofy is where did we go? Yeah, water is heavy. You know, it will definitely make an unsinkable ship sinkable in a hurry. So, and we're just touching on the top of this. I mean, I've always been fascinated with Titanic, and even have, where did I put them? One of the 100th anniversary coins that actually has coal in it is supposed to be from the Titanic. Is it? It is to me, but you know, it very well could just be a piece of charcoal that they mashed up and got $55 from me for, but to me, it's real. That's the other thing now too is, Titanic's a big cash grab. If you can come up with a new theory and it makes even no sense at all, they'll do a special on you just to see what your theory is and why you believe it. And you can make your own TikTok video and probably make quite a bit of money. So why does Titanic stand out? Basically, it's one of those things that people are never going to let go of because it really could have been avoided so easily. 5 different ice warnings that came in that never got to the captain. One just a few minutes before the impact that never got to where it should have been. The fact that people were so cool under pressure for the most part by the crew, although, by the band anyway, band playing right till the boat went down. And as far as getting people into lifeboats, they could have done that a whole lot faster. People just didn't believe it was supposed to be unsinkable. So they kind of gathered on the decks, expecting they would be they were annoyed. They figured they'd be called on the decks just for safety drill, and then that was going to be the end of it. And then they were going to leave that in the dust and go back to sleep. But a lot of those people did go to sleep, but permanently. With so prevention, again, the wireless operators were so busy with all the millionaires and billionaires messages that they just put like physical warning of damage to the ship aside. So again, money talking and safety walking, and just nothing there. Now, after it got hit, what could they have done? This was, because you had so little damage, there were possibilities, of one boat for sure they did find out surrounded by ice. Could they have drove Titanic to it and as it went down, unloaded people? Kind of a thought. The other one was that, again, the damage was so minimal, they probably literally could have put James Cameron through this out there, and it makes sense, put mattresses down on the side of the boat. And if they would have even got at least 1 or 2 compartments plugged up, which the main damage was about a third of the ship in between. Imagine 1/3 the ship, so 300 feet, and in between there was the main damage where the iceberg got a really good kiss on the starboard side. So you could technically have plugged it with some mattresses and at least prolonged it, got more people saved. There was another idea, and this would have been a really bold move. Take everybody's life jackets and throw them into that one boiler room that was leaking the least. Again, trying to just minimize the effect of the water. That would have been pretty ballsy. I don't think a lot of people would have given up their life jacket for a shot at the title. 1 in a million. I wouldn't. I don't know about anybody in chat, but that was another way they did it. It was pretty comical. No, most of them were pretty experienced. Captain Smith that was going to be his last voyage. So he was ready to retire. Second in command, Lightower, had been well seasoned out at sea. So he knew what he was doing. Third Officer Murdoch, they must have had quite a bit of confidence, and he must have had someone in order to let him drive the boat. So, let him have his own watch and command of the deck. That must mean you have some pretty experience behind you. One of the biggest contributors was the fact that they didn't have the binoculars up in the crow's nest. So they would have seen that thing a lot farther away if they'd had the proper equipment. I don't know why they didn't call down and ask somebody to bring it up, but again, in hindsight, if they'd had those binoculars, we may not even be talking about this boat to this day. And also the fact that I know it's gut instinct to want to avoid something, but if Titanic had hit that iceberg like head on, odds are it would have crumpled 2, maybe 3 of the 4 watertight compartments. So yeah, it would have broken her nose, give her a couple of black eyes, but it would still be floating. You could have still got to where you were going or had a tow and offloaded your passengers. So if he had actually really thought that decision through, he would have just pretended it was a lifeguard icebreaker and cracked it right in the middle. But, again, human instinct and pressure. He turned it and it took too long and opened the side up and Titanic got disemboweled, basically. The efforts that went into people thinking they could raise it too was pretty comical in some sense, that in the beginning they were looking for one of the millionaires was looking for his son, and because the body had not been recovered yet and was actually going to go out and drop dynamite to try and blow the boat up in order to release the people that were trapped in there. How little twisted, how certain are we it hit an iceberg? There's conspiracy theories out there. There's a lot of conspiracies out there that a little twisted, and I covered a few of them up top. Again, I think everybody agrees it hit the iceberg, but what they don't agree on is why. The conspiracy theorists say they deliberately sank it. So, as I mentioned earlier, only Zeus 13. Yo, can I ask you something? Of course, fire away. And there was theories that they sunk it deliberately in order to get at 3 different people. Strauss, Esther, and Guggenheim, in order for J.P. Morgan to you can DM me on that, Zeus, and we will see what happens. So appreciate the offer. Thank you. Standing Stones, welcome. We're just covering a little history lesson tonight instead of beating the health and fitness thing to death. And then we're going to talk a little Bigfoot after we're done here. So another thing they were trying to do was raise the Titanic, which they were originally going to came up with the idea of pumping ping pong balls into it, which I found, even back then had to been, what are you thinking? Because if you take a ping pong ball and even go a few feet below the ocean, that's the end of that ping pong ball. So what do they think is going to happen when they go 2.5 miles deep? There is no ping pong ball in the world that's going to do that. But again, people are willing to, if they have an idea, sometimes those ideas may be just best kept in silence. Because ping pong guy will probably never live that one down, as should be. And then they had actually thought about filling it with using diesel balloons and straps, which I can't imagine the lift it would take in order to get even half that ship up, which is, that's what it is. It's in half, and they're about a mile and a half apart. The bow is pretty much intact, other than missing the back half. And also, little twist, I've had strange things happen past 2 nights. I think I have a juvenile must be, be interested in hearing more about that, because I'm guessing a juvenile Sasquatch, not a juvenile person. So they're going to use lift bags, and then they determined that the rate of decay in the boat is actually way faster than they thought. It's probably lost half the integrity now. Another 50 to 100 years, there will be no wreck to visit. And it'll just be an orange stain on the bottom floor, or ocean bottom floor, with a whole bunch of plaques that people have decided to leave there. Titanic's actually for sale right now. Was it? You can actually buy it. I know this seems like why, but somebody had money and really wanted to protect and preserve the wreck. I believe it's 11.5 million, but that would give you the entire rights to the boat. So if you're looking to preserve it, you could actually turn around and close it off. No more dives. You'd have to figure out a way to monitor it with floats or something around the wreck site, but you could keep these subs from going down. And I don't know how you all feel. If you want to let me know in the comments, that's great. But with them constantly bringing everything up with all these mementos from back then, it's kind of and I hate to say that I bought one, but at the same time, sometimes it feels like they're robbing the jewels off the corpse of the old lady at the grave site, because they're bringing so much stuff up that's unregulated. And the fact that Bob Ballard would have brought just a spoon up or something from that, he could have claimed it because he found it. Little twisted hitting Sasquatch hitting my house and scraping down the side of her house. Little twisted, is that at night? Late at night? I don't know how many of you know the story that when they found the Titanic, how that actually came about. That only came out fairly recent, I think 10 or 15 years ago. I mean, for a Titanic nerd, it's cool, but anybody listening at the same time, you can kind of. It's interesting from the fact that we were never notified of some of the. This is another instance of government cover up. Believe it or not, helping find the Titanic was Bob Ballard originally went out, approached the Navy to, he wanted to find it, and they counter offered him with, they had 2 nuclear subs with live nuclear heads. Little twisted, yes, late at night, and was in the dumpster at 4 this morning. Yeah, pets that went off and went crazy. That had to be. How close is the dumpster to your house? But he went out. A scorpion was one of them, and I can't think of the second one. But there were 2. The Navy said you have X amount of days to find these 2 subs, and anything after that, and verify that the nukes are intact, and verify that they're there, and then whatever time's left, you can go look for the boat. So he went out, and Scorpion and Thresher, those were the 2 nuclear subs that had been sank with live nuclear heads that the government never said, hey, this could be a problem. They kept it under their hat, and Bob Ballard went out, took footage, was able to get inside the subs, checked the nuclear warheads, and found out they were okay. A little twist of my cats scattered and were scared. I bet they were. You know, a juvenile outlet making a whole bunch of noise. I hope your cats are indoor only, and he wasn't looking for the cats. So it turned out Bob Ballard had 2 weeks left after finding that. And then he went out and joined his partner, and they did what they called mowing the lawn, where they just went in little tight lines, like you mow your lawn literally, and back and forth. And they came up upon a boiler. It was like 2 a.m. And if you ever see the video of them waking Bob Ballard up for that, it's hilarious. I can't use the words he used on here in his elation that they found the boiler. But that was when they knew there was a problem, was because of the fact, yes, indoor, good. At least the kitties are safe. Was they found the boiler, so they knew something bad had happened, because how did the boiler get outside the boat? Muddy Creek Podcast, that's my buddy right there. Victoria, Miss V, as everybody should know her, check out her show. It's amazing. One of the best interviewers out there as far as kindness and respect, and able to get to the heart of the matter at the same time, plus address fun facts that some other people don't do, like when she had the interview with Dr. Meldrum. Lenny, how we doing? Just talking a little Titanic before we start talking Bigfoot conspiracies as well. Conspiracy theory tonight. Yeah, so that was how they found out Titanic was busted right down the, well, 2/3. That was one of the other theories, was the fact that conspiracy that the expansion joints failed, prematurely. They did prove that wrong. They also proved the fact that Titanic was never like this, like was in the movie. It probably broke more like that, which kind of makes sense, because for a ship to go all the way up would take a whole lot of, especially when you got expansion joints in there, and the expansion joints are literally, when the boat goes through and the waves, these things kind of ride each other out. So it allows the boat to flex. That way, if it gets caught between two waves, it can kind of come together and come apart, and doesn't completely come apart. But when you got the full front end of the boat tipping, filling rapidly, and the back end kind of coming up a little more slowly, you get divorced, basically. Well, Cameron admitted that, Griff's the sensationalism of Hollywood. It was, but that was what was given at the time, was the fact that it went straight up and straight down and stayed intact. And so when he did the movie, he was going on facts of the time, that everybody said it had broke underneath the surface. When Muddy Creek Podcast, wide strange, surprised you aren't talking about that. Yeah, being from Michigan, that one hits close to home. My cousin had an uncle on that boat, so that in itself is another one. Maybe we'll touch on that, because there are some new evidence of what happened. So that's a pretty deep dive too. But Titanic's always been one of my passions, right up there with Bigfoot. The fact that both, you can have your opinion on this. You can believe Titanic and Bigfoot are both real, or you can believe one's fake and the other was staged. You'd be wrong, but you can have the opinion. That's fine. Well, we can touch on Edmund Fitzgerald. That's no problem. I'm just winging it off the top of my head, but hey, Thomas, November night, And at some point, Edmund Fitzgerald had started sail from Wisconsin and was headed down around through Lake Superior. And at one point, she started to list a little bit, and the captain thinks that they had run aground. And after that, maybe I should just do a show on this. Maybe we'll save this. Let's just, yeah, we'll do that. We'll give you the gist of it now and then deep dive it on another show because that is a deep topic as to what happened. Basically, Evan Fitzgerald went out and into weather. The Lake Superior is notorious. There's something like 10,000 wrecks in that lake, in the Great Lakes. Most of them are in Superior. The waves are actually worse than the waves on the ocean because of the fact that it's in a smaller area. So the waves become increasingly intense because of it. And, boat went down without any warnings, and warnings went out without any cries for help. Never heard from again. And, how it went down, and it's actually pretty crazy. And the theories around that one too get pretty deep. So we'll get into that. We'll do that next show. Anyway, so those are some Titanic conspiracies. The fact that they did it intentionally in order to start a new bank, which just sounds ludicrous to me. Pack ice, a little more plausible, but still not likely, because if it was low-lying pack ice, how did it get on the deck? Deliberately sunk for insurance money by switching the boats, which was totally debunked, and still it persists, because now they're even saying they just switched the propellers. Like, why would you do that with as big as they are, and how would they do that? I do believe they have their own tide, plus with the winds and with the cross section of the winds that come down, get gnarly up there. They get really, really gnarly. So Bigfoot conspiracies. I was going to do a special one on just the Patty Gimlin film, but I watched the show just the other night, and they did a very good one on that. As far as what I was going to touch on, so we'll save that for another date. I don't want people to think I'm infringing. So, as far as the fact that the PG film, all the conspiracies that lie in that, the fact that people think it's fake. The guy who came out, with the suit, supposedly, the fact that Roger Patterson did it because he was involved with a TV channel and had gotten a loan for that and for the camera. And so people saying it was staged. I've heard Bob Gimlin was in on it, but because he walked away, he was hoaxed himself. I'm sorry, in my opinion, I don't buy it. I don't buy the fact that Gimlin was hoaxed. Now, was Roger Patterson a good man? By all accounts, he was a little on the shady side, as far as business dealings and stuff. But even if somebody's on the shady side, you can't throw out the evidence. Yeah, you can look at the character, but when you look at the amount of evidence there is for this film, there's just no way. And the fact that, how would he have foreseen the fact that that film would become the second most scrutinized film in entire human history? The only one above that's the JFK film, the Zapruder film. The Rogerson PG film is second most scrutinized in history. It keeps giving up more and more detail to the fact that it's real. So the fact that some nut job claims he got a suit, went out, and was able to do this makes no sense. The height's all wrong. And correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, people. Feel free to chime in. You know, maybe you have your own conspiracy theory too. Uh, you know, you got the whole supposed unaliving of several Bigfoot. To me, that doesn't make any sense. That's just my opinion. You know, as far as people seeing blood in the water, that could very well just be the type of mud. There's all kinds of uh, various people willing, you can't replicate the walk. The fact what a lot of people forget about folks, is the fact that there are tracks involved. And those tracks were a few inches deep, 17 inches long, but the depth in the mid-tarsal break. Bob Gimlin got up on a 36-inch tree stump, jumped off with a cowboy boot, and barely made a dent. Hey, Curtis, how we doing? Glad you could join us. Tracks also, I believe, had dermal ridges in them, if I remember hearing that right. Again, any of this I may be mistaken on, but to the best of my knowledge, how would they know back then as far as putting dermal ridges into a mold and making that track? Is beyond me. Experts came up and, they cast the tracks. The fact that Bob Gimlin couldn't make a dent in those prints were a few inches deep shows to the weight that the individual was. I mean, Bob Gimlin had estimated, her to be close to 7 feet. It takes a big man to weigh 7 feet. Patty was a girl, but, she's not any more thick than the rest of the squatches. But he guessed 350 pounds, and when they estimated the weight, it was closer to 700. So it shows how extremely thick and dense Patty was. When you go to height, as far as some clown getting in a suit, you have to be pushing 7 feet tall. 6'6" at the least if you put a little knobby crown on top to get the sagittal crest. And then you have to be able to walk very comfortably in a suit across uneven terrain in an unnatural walk. And not only do you have to be about 6'6", you have to weigh 700 pounds to make those tracks. Andre the Giant was 7 foot, weighed 500 pounds at his peak, and he didn't even walk comfortably in his own wrestling boots. So how's he going to walk comfortably in a Sasquatch suit? Same thing with Shaquille O'Neal. He's 7 foot and close to 400 pounds, I believe, at some point. Moves okay, but definitely not as casual as Patty's walking. And that's when he's on cement or a basketball court. So how are they going to replicate that walk? And we're only talking how many people are 7 feet tall, especially back when you're in 1967. Not a lot. How many of them are going to get in a suit and walk around? Little twisted. That's as much as a horse. Yeah, Patty was huge. Not by Bigfoot standards, but by human standards, she was huge and thick. That girl had back. And according to some of the new photos out of Todd, I hope I get this right, Todd Gates. Anyway, he just did the new enhanced version of the Patty famous shot with her face, and the whole frame 352 where she's walking and has that, the look over her shoulder. And it looks like I don't see it, but a lot of people are saying it's a baby holding on. And that was one of the reasons why she was hightailing it out of there. She didn't wait for the people to walk by her. Standing stones, if they were fake, I do not think it would have been a female breast. No. Who would have thought to do that? And who would have thought ahead of time for the film to be so scrutinized that we're seeing some people call it a herniation. I think it's a torn quad. I've torn my bicep and know how they act when you tear them. But in her right leg, when she walks, there's a physical bulge that pops out when it flexes and goes back in. Could be a hernia, but where it's at and the shape to me screams torn quad that just rehealed. Standing stones. Exactly. That's why would they have thought of putting boobs on a Bigfoot in 1967, especially with how bashful we were back then before Instagram. Standing stones always thought that. Patty was strutting. Patty was cutting a rug. I mean, she was moving. But I guess if I had two guys, one with some foreign object in his hand, the other guy had a rifle trained on me, I'd probably move too. Although Bob says he never had intention of doing anything unless the encounter went south. Uh, the gentleman that what it boils down to me is the suit. I would, I'm not a millionaire or anything, but I would quit Bigfoot and take down the channel and give away all that Bigfoot stuff. If anybody can go out there to that site, recreate that film with the tech of the day and recreate that, it's not going to happen. They didn't have even spandex back then. If you look, Planet of the Apes was the best they could do. There just wasn't the technology to make a suit. And even in the 90s, when that moron turned around and made a suit, he didn't even come close. It was nothing like it. I'm sorry, I shouldn't insult. When that individual made that suit just to discredit the film, I'm sure there was some money to be made if he could actually do it, but he didn't. He just looks like a tart muffin in the history of the Bigfoot world. Yeah, it's preposterous at this point. Bob Gillen didn't get hoaxed. The film is real. We just have to, it's the gold standard. The fact that people with the Paul Freeman footage too, conspiracy theories there that he was out to. That was the other conspiracy theory with Patty. Let's backtrack. Was Roger Patterson was being paid for a documentary on Bigfoot? Maybe, it sounds like that way, but if he was, then guess what? Job done. He got a heck of a piece of film. And if they were going to stage it, why wouldn't they shoot more of it? If you're going to go through that time and money and know you're going to make money, why would you give, just a few frames of film? And without the stabilization, it's really hard to grasp what's going on. I know they did take it and put it in the movie theaters as a short film in front of other films, but and the fact that Bob Gillen basically went into hiding over this thing for years because of the backlash. People saying that he's a fake, he's a liar, and I did a show, co-hosted a show on another podcast. If you check out Star Fox Media, you can see that. It was a tribute to Autumn Williams, who had her own show, and she was actually the one who got Bob Gimlin after 37 years of silence. Yeah, Griff, exactly. Griff asked, why only one creature if you're going to stage and fake it? And one good creature with a good shot, not bouncing all over the place. Before they stabilized it, you only had a few frames of that to get a good look at. It's just lucky that information was stored on the film that they could do it. The information was in that film, so now what are we going on? 67. So God, coming up on 60 years of celebration for that film. And it only keeps giving more information with our technology. They could have never foreseen that. I'm just glad Bob Gilman made it to the point where now he's accepted and being treated with respect and admired for what he did by most people. Not everybody. There's still some loonies out there who, and not saying if you don't believe you're a loony, that's not it. But when you come up and threaten an 80-some-year-old man at a convention to the point where he has to have bodyguards, yeah, now you're pushing loony status. From all accounts, Bob Gilman's one of the kindest, genuine people you'll ever meet. When asked why he finally came out of hiding, it was Autumn Williams to her, and he said, because I believe you're sincere and have the best intentions in your heart of what to do with this. That's the only reason he came out. At one point, he was like, I'm done. I wish I'd have never seen the darn thing. His wife got static once they figured out whose wife she was. Hey, you're Bob Gimlin's wife at work. We thought Bob was an honest, sincere man, but he's lying. Why is he coming up with such an elaborate story? And it's finally been in the last couple decades that Bob's been vindicated. So it's unfortunate Roger passed in 1974. But so Bob's the last one. Griff, I admit I'm here, but I'm not all there. Who is? Anybody who says it's definitely not all there. I'm not all here. Otherwise, I'd be able to just let this flow without any thought or stuttering like that. Anybody have questions as far as what I've covered tonight so far? And we'll definitely visit the Fitzgerald. That's a good one because it's another one that hits home and was always fascinated by, and because of all the facts surrounding it. But if we don't have any questions, we will. Oh, Standing Stones, if it was fake, they wouldn't have ridden way into a canyon to film. They could have done it a lot closer to the road. Absolutely. Find them. And if I remember right, when Bob Gilman had not been back to the site since the incident, and it was 2003 when he first went back. So they actually had a hard time finding it because so much had changed. There'd been, I believe, a fire went through there, so the undergrowth was all different. He had a hard time, and it took him about a full day with Autumn Williams' crew to find the exact site again. But now, now they know exactly where it is. I don't know if all these, campfires in California had any effect on it. Hopefully that site was spared because it's a piece of history. And I'm going to go back to this one. If it was fake, they wouldn't have ridden all the way to the canyon to film it. They could have done it a lot closer to the road. They could have, but maybe they were worried somebody would see them if you want to go down that road, which, like I said, I don't believe happened, but playing devil's advocate, if you're too close, then you have to worry about somebody seeing you, somebody walking in with the suit, the fact that you might get poked with a lead object, we'll say, because I don't think I can say the S word. So if you want to ride far enough in where people aren't going to see you and people are less likely to be, but I don't think that was the case. They wrote in, yes, they were on a mission to film a documentary. Standing Stones, okay, also, I didn't think about it. Take us to where it was. Yeah, Bluff Creek is a pretty rough get to, I guess. I always wanted it on my list, but if it means camping without a hotel room, that might stay on my list. My idea of roughing it's a hotel room without internet. But we have come up on that magic hour mark, so unless somebody's got some questions, we'll start to wrap this thing up and we'll start getting ready for the next show. Keep your fingers crossed. I do have working on a surprise guest that will enlighten and maybe divide a little bit. Griff, there's a statement about Gimlin that the reason they never fired a shot was because of the other ones. I never heard that. No, I never heard that. I just watched that first interview too, and he mentioned never firing a shot, but he said he thought it was because it looked too human and he wouldn't unless it came toward him. Standing Stone, thanks, Brian. Oh, thank you guys. You're the ones that came in here and listened to me ramble for an hour and 3 minutes now. So I appreciate you entertaining me. Griff, look it up. I heard it somewhere. I will, definitely, because, I'm one of those that there's not a lot that I'm interested in, but once I'm interested in something, I sink my teeth into it, don't want to go. I want to find out all I can. Now, I don't get as crazy as some of these people, and we'll go back to Titanic for a moment, who not only know how many people went down, it was 15 something, 703 survived, 2,100 people total. So it would have been, what, 1563 that passed. Anyway, there's people that not only know that, but also know, each cabin where the billionaire stayed and the layout of the stars at night. I am not that deep. I've only got so much memory space and it's less than a terabyte, so I have to be careful with what I put in there. That's why my short-term memory is so bad. It's all clogged up with long-term crap from 30 years ago. But on happy note, we will start bringing this down, and I want to thank everybody. It's always nice when the chat's involved, so I want to keep you guys doing that. I have a lot of fun when I can get questions and stuff because I do better. I will admit that. I do a lot better when I've got somebody to interact with instead of trying to be the lead and focal point. Lead like a lion for 30 years or live like a lamb for 70. Well, I'll tell you what, once you hit about 27, living like a lamb sounds pretty darn good. But on that note, we'll close it. Thank you all again. And as everybody says, from coast to coast and around the world, everybody have a great night, and we will see you next week.